Hi, Alan Stratton from As Wood Turns. First, a couple of items. I attended SWAT last week and gave a demo on hand-cut spheres, and I appreciate everyone who introduced themselves to me during SWAT. I appreciate getting to know you a little bit more than I can get in this video. So, thank you to each of you. Second item of business, the Ornament Challenge is coming up, annual. Get your ornament ready. We want to see your creativity and your contribution to the challenge. Whether you be a novice or an expert, it doesn't really matter. We just want to see the best you can do for that. That's more on that later, but essentially remember the submission time is November at ornamentchallenge.com. You can make it now, so go for it. Any craft, any media. Now for the project. At the AAW symposium, Eli Avisera demonstrated several versions of scoops. While I didn't attend his demonstration for this one, I saw the display and said, well, I don't know how he did it, but this is how I will do it. So essentially, it starts life as many others did, except that it's an offset so that the handle is, in effect, has its own set of curves here. And then the challenge is, well, leave that thick enough so that you can saw this in half and get two of them, and then they're matching. Well, I think maybe it looks better this way, or does it look better this way? Then hollow out the bowl portion of the scoop, and you're off and running with an eccentric single piece scoop. I think it's fun. Let's turn it. I am starting with a 2x2 by 7 inch piece of ash. Later I wish that I had started with the wood about 4 inches longer. The wood is mounted between centers. Before mounting and while finding center, I drew a diagonal line corner to corner. After drawing only the center portion of the other diagonal to mark center, I marked equal marks in increments of 1/8 inch out from the center and on both ends. To start, the wood is on the center or primary axis. Then, as usual, rough it round with my large bowl gouge. Now for some guide marks for the spherical bowl portion. I am borrowing from the octagon method for turning spheres. However, since this is on the end of a spindle, I cannot do the entire process. Other times I would mount to a chuck for more flexibility. This time, with the upcoming axis shifts, I will stay between centers and do the best that I can. Later on, I wish that I had more waste wood beyond the bowl portion towards the live center. For now, I shape the sphere as best that I can using the marks from the octagon method. Now for the first axis shift. On both ends, I shift to the next mark, which is 1/8 inch away in the same direction, at least for this scoop. Then proceed to cut a cove with a spindle gouge. At first, I cut air until the wood is solid again. Then form a cove, but leave the center a bit larger than on other scoops. After all, I need to cut down the middle later on. Then sand this cove through the grits. This is my only chance to sand this area. Time for the next axis shift. Again, on both ends, I shift the wood out to the next 1/8 inch increment for a new parallel axis that is 1/4 inch from the original axis. As I proceed to cut this cove, there is even more air wood before I again hit solid wood. The trick is to blend it into the previous cove without great view while it is rotating. The one thing I can somewhat rely on is the diameter of solid wood and compare that to the core of the previous cove. However, recognizing the previous cove is partially a ghost image. Sand here also. This time for the axis shift, I get cautious and move it back 1/8 inch instead of 1/8 inch further out. Again, cut a similar cove. Still, this is my only chance to sand, and that is now. I shift back to the original axis. I decided that it is time to refine the sphere end, cutting it more to a sphere. Significantly, I am cutting away much of the wood containing the live center point. While sanding this area, I try to wrap the sandpaper around the sphere to cut more of the high spots away, refining the sphere. This is where I wish I would have left more wood beyond the sphere to accommodate the live center better in a high-pressure situation. I try to shift the axis again. However, the wood splits at the tailstock end. Fortunately, the original axis hole is still sound, so I move the axis back to the original axis and decide that it will have to settle for that. Instead of another cove, I will round over the end. This is good because there is precious little space left for a full cove. This is as long as this scoop handle is going to be. This area is a bit different, in effect a bead. I want the largest diameter of the bead to blend nicely with the center of the previous cove. This will result in a slight hook at the end. Sand here also, then trim back the nub to a minimum, but without severing the last little bit. Over to the bandsaw, I do not dare hold this round piece by hand. Fortunately, a hand screw will do the holding and stabilize the wood. Since all of the axis shifts were parallel, the handle blends one way and the path to saw is clear. At the end, I reach around the saw blade to hold the scoop as the last of the cut is completed. At the disc sander, I sand the newly cut edge and then sand off the remaining nubs on both ends. I want to be careful not oversand, since this is a coarse grit. Now for a rotary tool with a round cutter to grind out the bowl portion. This is tedious work. I would rather be using the lathe tools to hollow, but I could not see a clear path to a good mount, so the rotary tool will have to do. This is followed by hand sanding in the bowl. Fortunately, the 80 grit wrapped around my thumb as a guide to the bowl interior. With that grit completed, the rest of the sanding grits go more quickly. Finally, mount a sanding pad with fine grit for a final cleanup, plus some hand sanding to ease over any remaining sharp edges. The finish is a utility mix of mineral oil and beeswax that I often use for sanding and finishing. I have thought about this scoop ever since the AAW symposium in May. Best of all, it worked. One could say that now it is a scoop for each hand. In reality, it is a cute scoop display with little practical use. That means I should sell it for more, if I did want to sell it. Maybe next time I can make the offset axes more dramatic, but have more risk of breaking. Or keep one end the same instead of parallel, but keep them in the same plane. Interesting. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my website as well as on YouTube. When you subscribe to my website, my notifications are much more reliable than YouTube's. Please tell your friends about my weekly videos. I appreciate your comments and questions. Please wear your full face shield whenever the lathe is running. As usual, I nag, but I hope to save your life and your eyesight. Once wood flies, dodging it is not an option.